Hello everyone, this is Margaret from Peace TV. Today we have Raquel from BUNCHFUL here with us. So first, Raquel, do you want to tell us about BUNCHFUL?
Oh, thank you. First, thank you to you, Margaret. And though we can't see him because he's behind the cameras, I would like to say thank you to George as well, who's filming us today. Thank you for inviting me and for the opportunity to tell you about the Bunchful organization. So, what our audience may not know is that Margaret and we were having a conversation earlier, and she mentioned that the word bunchful is a somewhat unusual word. And so I mentioned, indeed it is. We created the word bunchful. Now, Margaret, do you remember what it means to be bunchful? Not to put you on the spot.
I remember Raquel talked about bountiful means like abundance, right? Like you have abundance to share and to give others.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. To be bunchful, in fact, we coined the term to mean sharing your abundance with others. To be bunchful is to share your wealth, share your abundance with others, and that's what it means to be bunchful. More on that later on the organization itself. I
That's a
think
great name.
Oh, thank you.
Yes.
Thank you. I cannot take full credit for the name. When we first actually founded the company, we I was working at the time with someone who she had a time when we were really devising, what this organization was going to be. We were looking for a name, and she came up. Her name is Candice. She came up with the first part of that word, which is bunch. And immediately when she said bunch, I loved it. It felt crunchy. I said yes, but it wasn't enough. It felt it needed something. So I added the suffix full, and so it became bunchful. So that's how we actually came up with the word bunchful. But of course, the word bunchful is not an actual word, at least not yet, in the in the English dictionary. And so we had to give it its own meaning. And I later came to the realization that to be bunchful, it had something grand in it. It had something full. And so I coined it to mean sharing your abundance with others.
That's wonderful.
Thank you. Thank you. But you were asking me about my organization. And really to talk about Bunchful, really I have to go back a little bit to growing up in the Caribbean. I was born and grew up in Jamaica. But those first 10 years of my life were spent on a little farm, actually, in a little farm in town. Our farm was a little bit of a distance. And I grew up with my grandparents, my grandmother and grandfather, and my little brother, my little brother Greg. I always leave him out. But we grew up in that farm in town. What I learned at the time, and I didn't realize I was learning it, was the greatest acts of philanthropy. Now, we didn't have the word philanthropy as part of our lexicon. Growing up in a little farming town in Jamaica, the word philanthropy was not a word that was used. But what I witnessed was my grandmother would wake us up in the early morning hours. Me in particular, my little brother was too small. I was about 3 or 4 at the time. And she would start waking me up early morning hours. Now, when you live on a farm, you have to get up early. You have to go. You have to, do farming things. I didn't do any of that, by the way. I just went to the farm and played around with my friends. But farm life is an early life. And so we would be waking up at 5 a.m. in the morning sometimes even earlier when it was during harvest time. And the reason we woke up this early was because my grandmother would force me to go across the street with her to give breakfast to our uncle. Now, at the time, now, not every day we went to the farm. Most of the days I was going to either school or playing with my friends or any of that. But my day began with giving breakfast to uncle.
Like you bring your home cooked like meal to your uncle
Right.
from your home?
Yes.
I see.
Now, it sounds like there's a journey, there's a big distance that we're going, but it was a narrow street, okay? And his house was directly across the street from ours.
I see.
So the annoying part was that my grandmother would wake me up so early to take only a few steps across the street. I didn't understand, why can't you go by yourself? Why must I accompany you on this short?
Like, why do you have to wake me up so early?
I know. So it would be, some days more than others. I would be complaining more than others.
I see.
More than others. But one morning, I remember this so distinctly. When we arrived, his name was Uncle Engine, his body was bent halfway between the bed and the floor, as though he were trying to get out of bed and couldn't quite make it. After we'd been knocking for a long time, no one came. We had the door burst open, and his house was somewhat up on a bit of a stilt. So I was peering up, and that's when I saw he was completely stiff. He had passed away.
Oh.
Peace TV reporters have been active at the UN headquarters since 2010, the age of former UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon. They are often invited to gather pictures and news about high-level meetings and events at the UN headquarters. We usually report live on the scene the events of dozens of countries, including the US, France, the UK, Israel, Germany, Russia, Egypt, Kuwait, Bulgaria, Ukraine, and Morocco, and the EU at the UN headquarters and their residences in New York. Our news reports have, in part, kept the international community up to date with the work of different governments so that people everywhere will know the great efforts and contributions of the UN to world peace, international affairs, and multilateralism.
It's very interesting today for us that we get to share your story in a few different settings.
Yes, indeed. Thank you. Wow, sometimes this happens not just in interview stories, but in life. What do we do when things change on a dime? How do you adjust and still be able to meet the moment, still be able to have something come out of your endeavors? So today we've had a number of challenges with this interview. So you may see us in different scenarios as we've been moving around. But thank you so much, Margaret, for accommodating and and for your interest in what we're doing here at BUNCHFUL.
Yes, of course. It was my pleasure to learn about this lovely lady and her organization.
Earlier you had asked me how BUNCHFUL came to be, and I had started to tell the story
Yes.
of going across the street and having to deliver breakfast to my uncle. Well, that last morning of visiting Uncle Engine, we saw him. He had passed away. He was just curled there, between the bed and the floor. That image still remains with me. But what I really learned from that story was simply, a bit later, I found out that Uncle Engine was in fact not my uncle. and that my grandmother and even others in the community had been supporting him for so many years. There was obviously not someone from whom we could wish to gain any exchange from. This was someone who had been completely dependent on us, and yet he was taken care of with such care and warmth and giving. And that's when I first learned the meaning of giving, the meaning of philanthropy through my grandmother. It was very touching when later we learned that Uncle Engine left his entire estate to my grandmother, which included his house and land. But the important part of this was that my grandmother, we had our own home where we lived, and we didn't need a home. And so my grandmother turned around and gave that home and land completely away, unencumbered, to someone who needed a home. That was, at the time, it didn't sink in. It's one of those lessons where, it's just the incident stays with you. But over time, I learned what it really began to unveil itself, to reveal itself to me when it really started to sink in. So that's what it means to give. To give without the expectation of return. To give because giving is the act itself. It is the means. It is the end. And there's no I give you this so that you can give me that. And that's what I really wanted to impart and to that's why I created the BUNCHFUL organization. I want to shine the spotlight on those who's giving, who are the exemplars in our society, those who are really giving to help others. So that was the beginning. There were other lessons that I learned along the way when I moved from the countryside to live with my father in the city, and I'm there in a new city with all the new things that a new city offers, and I had this feeling of desolation because I had left my little brother and my grandmother, my grandparents in the countryside. And that was a very difficult, painful period for me. But there was there was one evening when my brother came and dragged me out, and we all went because he wanted me to accompany the family to the store next door. And the reason for that was because on Friday evenings, not every Friday evening, but often enough, my father would hand $100 to the store owner, who would then, people would then line up for a meal on a Friday evening. And that was, lots of hungry people. And $100 at the time was a lot of money. So we would see the lines stretching all the way down the street for people who had come for a meal. And that really touched me because now I saw this, this act of giving that was now being, practiced by my father. And that recalled for me those times when I saw my grandmother giving. And that was a moment that really brought me out. And I was able to go on with regular childhood plays and childhood joys. And I think I can say that I've had a very circuitous path, lots of some success, lots of failure, but over the years. But the thing that I felt for a really long time, that I wasn't doing the thing that I was meant to be doing. And having founded BUNCHFUL, I am at peace. It is not the only thing that I am. I am, like all of us, so many things, layers, and so many things that I want to create and bring into the world. But BUNCHFUL is an important one of those things. So I am lucky to be able to help shine the spotlight on givers. and really grounded it in something that the UN SDGs that were created as a blueprint for a better world, and being able to look at giving in how can giving help to achieve these goals so that we all can help to create a better world for ourselves, for our children, for the future, for now. And so that's essentially what the BUNCHFUL organization is all about.
Yes, and also I think you mentioned it's a kind of a response to what is the spotlight of the UN SDG this year, right?
Oh, yes. In November of 2023 was when we had the inauguration of the BUNCHFUL Awards. And so we identified a number of individuals whose giving we can help to in the attainment of the SDGs. Now this year, our focus was good health and well-being, which is SDG number 3. And so we look at those whose giving would really help to move the needle toward attainment of the SDGs. And that was accompanied by our 3rd annual summit, which is the BUNCHFUL Future of Philanthropy World Summit. And at the summit, we explored, we had discussions, workshops around that focus topic, which was good health and well-being. So you'll have to stay tuned to learn what our focus will be. Our focus SDG will be for 2024. We haven't released that information as yet.
Okay, we'll definitely stay tuned for that.
Oh, thank you. Yes, January 1st we will be announcing the SDG focus for 2024, and I think that you will find there's a lot of correlation around it. There are many reasons why we have chosen this particular SDG for our 2024 focus. Yeah, especially in a world where we're living today, there's so much strife going on. There's wars all around the world. We want to see how we can, without choosing sides, how we can help toward a more peaceful world for all of us. At this year's event, we actually invited an Israeli and Palestinian to collaborate in delivering delivery of one of our awards. So those kinds of things are also acts of giving that we want to help, that we want to exemplify, that we want to help move toward.
Yes, thank you so much for sharing your stories today. Today we not just learned about this lovely lady and where she gets the BUNCHFUL ideas since her childhood, how she learned about giving and sharing and helping and how beautiful that is. So it was a wonderful time to share about your stories today, and hopefully we'll talk soon.
Thank you so much, Margaret. It was wonderful, our luncheon today, and with all its disruptions, thank you again. And the next time I see you, I will ask, what does it mean to be BUNCHFUL? So hopefully.
I will take the test next time.
Thank you. Thank you again.
Thank you.
Everyone. Bye.